lot of expectations coming into this one. I think if you were just a casual bettor that didn't dive into a lot of the logistics or numbers or personnel, this would seem like a cakewalk for Clemson to cover 12.5. But Duke does have some pieces, and they were well improved last year, should take another big step this year. So, Mark, how are you looking at this game in terms of betting it?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple things we need to look at, right? And, the first thing we look at these games is Clemson's motivation. And I think last night gave us a lot of it. And people want to say this is narrative or whatnot, but I've been watching Dabo Swinney a lot of years, and he was watching the Florida State Seminoles get all the headlines last night by whooping on LSU. And, he went out and got Garrett Riley, from TCU to run the offense, to really open things up, because the offense was the problem last year. He's going to want to showcase that. He's going to want to put up a big number to let people know the ACC still runs through Clemson, right? Yeah, I know Jordan Travis is getting a ton of headlines right now. This is, his conference. They got to beat him. That game's in a couple weeks. So I think they're going to put up a big number tonight. I laid to 13. I'm surprised to see the market moving against me. Duke had a nice season, 9-win team last year, right? But this is another level for them. Yes, they beat Miami of Florida last year. They were a little bit of a mess, right? Clemson beat that team by 30 points. They lost to UNC, another team Clemson beat by 29 points last year. This is a Duke team, as good a season as they had last year, lost to Georgia Tech. So, there's just a difference as far as talent between these two teams. And, I like Clemson. I think defensively, they're going to be able to bully them up front. They have one of the best front sevens in the country. Trotter's one of the best linebackers in the country. So I think they're going to be able to give Duke some problems. Riley Leonard's a gamer. They're going to hang with them early, but I think eventually Clemson pulls away. And I think Dabo has motivation to run this thing up as much as possible, because he doesn't want people talking about Jordan Travis and Florida State. He wants them talking about the Clemson Tigers.
And I was also on TCU. I wasn't drinking the Coach Prime Kool-Aid either. I took TCU to cover that spread, and that was clearly a disaster for me and the Horned Frogs. But yeah, I mean, to go into that environment and put up those types of numbers and just look unfazed by it. I mean, Shedeur Sanders set a school passing record, 510 yards. 4 different receivers had over 100 yards. That's just really, really impressive. And they deserve a ton of respect after that. But you have to think about it in terms of, betting going forward and how the market's going to look at it, and the overreaction of the public and all of that jazz. So yeah, I'm going to be cautious to lay anything with Colorado right away against Nebraska, but certainly will be a team that I will look to play on going forward. I mean, we were talking kind of in the break that their win total set at 3.5. They should cruise over that if they play this type of game week in and week out. Now, how sustainable is that going forward? I mean, you have Travis Hunter, who's playing 126 snaps, both sides of the ball. Sure, the first game of the season, he's got fresh legs. He's ready to go. He's pumped up. But what happens when you kind of get towards like week 6, week 7, week 8, even later in the season? I mean, how is he going to be able to continue playing over 100 snaps and at that level on both sides of the ball? So betting on Colorado is going to be, I don't know. It's going to be really hard to figure out what to do with them.
Yeah, you really have to take it week by week, because, one of the concerns with the team coming into this season is when you're that, reliant on the transfer portal to bring people in, it's hard to kind of have depth, especially when you're coming off, you're starting with a roster that was at ground zero, 1-11 last year. And I think that's where Colorado will still struggle this year, is if they do get injuries, if they start to pile up, they don't have guys behind them to bring them in. Their front end guys are very strong, but they still don't have the depth. But, as far as Hunter, that's going to be a key part. But I will give Sanders credit. One of the parts that impressed me the most about this Buffalo's team was they were the more disciplined team, not the team that went to the national championship and surprised everybody last year. They were the more disciplined team on the football field. They played cleaner. They didn't make the mistakes, and they did it on the road. And we saw in like the Florida-Utah game, like when you're playing in a hostile environment, like it is hard. You get the snap count wrong. You got linemen jumping, mental mistakes, all that stuff plays into it. I know Dion said it time in and time out, but the Colorado Buffaloes were ready for the moment. They were ready, and they looked. That was the most impressive part to me, how clean, how disciplined they were. And that's something that's not going to go away. He's instilled that in his team, obviously. That's going to continue from week to week. But I got to think about it a little bit more this week and whether I'm going to play them against Nebraska. Nebraska looked pretty bad, but the way they're built is they want to be physical. They want to run the ball. And that's the kind of team that I think can give Colorado trouble. I'm just not sure if Jeff Sims and the Cornhuskers passing attack is going to be able to keep up with Colorado if they do fall behind early.
Not a good showing for Florida being on the road. I think that was the farthest they've traveled for a week 1 game, but you can't really blame it on that in week 1. They weren't coming from somewhere else the weekend before or anything like that. But I thought Utah looked really good considering Cam Rising was not in that game, but the offensive line held up. Their defense put a ton of pressure on Florida's offensive line that had a lot of new faces this year. Then you had Graham Mertz at quarterback for Florida. I was not high on him at Wisconsin. Actually, backtrack that a little bit. Do you remember the first game he played in at Wisconsin? I think he threw like 4 touchdown passes that game, and everyone was like, this is the next big quarterback in the Big Ten. After that, what did Graham Mertz do those next 2.5 seasons? Not much. And he didn't look any better at Florida. I'm sorry, but he did not look good in that game.
No, he didn't. And, Florida, I just feel like they look lost under Billy Napier. Like they don't have an identity. And, again, and you have to kind of take a step back a little bit because Utah is a tough place to play. I mean, they won, I want to say 26 of their last 27 home games, right? You don't just go into Utah and win. Like that's a tough spot to play in, especially in the opener. But the offensive line had a lot of new pieces. They looked like they had a lot of new pieces. That Mertz is just, I don't think he's the answer. So, they don't have that quarterback that's going to be able to win games for you. You almost have to try and build the offense around him not making the critical mistake. And, I just think Florida's in a world of hurt this year. I played them under 5.5 wins at plus money. I think it was at like plus 130 when I got it. And I just think that this could be a real rough year. I just feel like it's a team without direction. Like they just seem like we don't know where they're going. Like we were not seeing those signs of progress that you want to see. So I think it's a little bit concerning. Now, we'll see how they bounce back. Like I said, Utah is a tough place to play. A lot of people go there and lose, but much like we talked about the way Oregon State won, the way Colorado won, playing clean football, they were the opposite, right? They did not, they lost very unimpressively. So that'll be interesting.